Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, June 8th, 2018. As far as fire potential impacts go for the next few days, we're really highlighting Saturday and Sunday across mainly Utah and Nevada for some pre-cold frontal winds spreading across much of the region. Winds will be fairly light today, with just some winds starting to move into far western Nevada and then really increase across much of Utah and Nevada on Saturday. We're seeing low minimum relative humidities and gusts to 30 to 40 miles an hour and even higher in some areas. By Sunday, the winds will mainly be limited to eastern and southeast Utah as a cold front filters in through the rest of the geographic area. Weather for the past 24 hours is shown here as some showers and thunderstorms move through Idaho and the northern fringe of Nevada. Current fire activity is shown on this map. We did see a flurry of new initial attack along I-80 in northern Nevada there. Most of those fires seem to be contained, with just a few other fires popping up over Idaho and Utah. Precipitation for the past 7 days has really been limited just to the mountains of western Idaho and then a band that moved through portions of southeast Idaho. Elsewhere across the region, it's been very dry for the last week. This dryness is really reflected in our current ERCs, especially for eastern and southern Utah, where we're seeing that long-term drying trend really creating a big impact right now. ERCs are hitting or above the 97th percentile for much of eastern Utah, and in some areas setting historical records for the time of year. This is a pretty critical period for portions of eastern and southern Utah. Live fuel moistures are on the downswing across the region as well. Some areas are seeing normal sagebrush live fuel moisture for the time of year, but there are a few pockets of very dry conditions out there, one of which is in far southwest Idaho, near Boise, where we're seeing those values setting historical records since 2002. In eastern Utah and southern Utah, we're also seeing some areas that are very low, including central Utah, the Sevier Reservoir, where they're also setting historical records, and the higher elevations of southeast Utah there at Cane Gulch. So we seem to be right on the fringe of having all of our fuels really drying out and being available to burn across much of the geographic area. This morning's satellite imagery shows dry southwest flow in place across the geographic area, with some of that moisture that moved through Idaho yesterday exiting off to the northeast. The main feature we're looking at here is that area of low pressure off the Canadian coast. This is a pretty significant area of low pressure for moving into the month of June, and it's going to be bringing very strong winds to the area mainly tomorrow. For today, we're kind of looking at this in-between mild day, not a lot of strong winds, and the storms have moved off, so looking for a hot, dry day for much of the geographic area. Significant fire potential remains elevated across the southern and eastern portions of the Great Basin. Generally light winds expected again for today, but we will see winds start to pick up in far western Nevada, out ahead of that area of low pressure. Minimum relative humidities are very low in the single digits, down to 4 and 5% across southern and eastern Utah. On Saturday, we'll see those pre-cold frontal winds move into Utah and Nevada, and the main low pressure and associated cold front will follow behind it, probably moving into western and central Idaho by tomorrow afternoon, and lagging behind Utah and Nevada for Sunday. We have highlighted much of southern Nevada and southern and eastern Utah for these strong winds on Saturday. We will see gusty winds across much of the geographic area, but points further northward aren't necessarily critical just yet, so we haven't highlighted those for high risk. Taking a closer look, here are the expected wind gusts for Saturday afternoon. Gusts in excess of 40 miles an hour, maybe up to 50 miles an hour locally there in the central portion of the Great Basin, eastern Nevada and western Utah. So this is a very significant wind event for much of the geographic area, particularly Nevada and Utah. Relative humidities remain very low associated with these strong southwest winds, and temperatures should peak out in the high 90s across some of the central valleys there in northern Utah, and even higher down south. By Sunday, the cold front will sweep through the northern two-thirds of the geographic area, decreasing fire potential in those areas. Temperatures will drop about 20 degrees across the north. We will still see some strong winds out ahead of this system in eastern and southern Utah. So we're still highlighting some of those areas. The cold front won't impact southern and eastern Utah as significantly as points further north and west. Shown here are those gusts for Sunday afternoon, still looking to be in the high risk or red flag warning category above 30 miles an hour. Maximum temperatures are shown here as well, just to show the strength of this cold front across the northern two-thirds of the geographic area. Highs on Saturday will potentially be in the upper 90s across northern Nevada and northern Utah, and highs on Sunday will drop into the upper 60s, low 70s. Precipitation associated with this system is really just going to be limited to the mountains of central Idaho and maybe a little bit further south there into just peeking into far northwest Nevada, as the bulk of the system is fairly dry for Utah and Nevada. A mild day is expected on Monday. In the wake of that area of low pressure, we'll see the dryness return to the geographic area, even across the north, but the temperatures will be on the mild side for just the very beginning of next week. By Tuesday, things will start to warm up as we get a little bit of a high pressure building into the geographic area. The next thing we'll be looking at is this moisture across the southwest. You can see that those green tones over Arizona and New Mexico. We're looking at some of that moisture possibly coming up into southern and eastern Utah by the middle of next week, which could bring the increased chance for some thunderstorms, possibly on the dry side as we head into the middle of next week. We'll see more of that moisture moving further northward into the central and eastern Utah by Wednesday. And we'll also see another little area of low pressure strengthening off the Pacific coast. As we watch this little guy move into the Pacific Northwest, we'll expect to see an increase in southwest winds once again to Utah and Nevada, and this could set us up for a little bit of a critical period as we might see some lightning move into eastern Utah ahead of those winds by Thursday. We'll be keeping a close eye on this event, and we will most likely be putting in some high risk as we get closer to the event next week. 7-day precipitation accumulation totals are shown here, and even though we'll see some of that moisture move up from the south, it looks like the bulk of the moisture stays to our east and south, and so we may be looking at just some isolated drier type thunderstorms if we see any. The extended forecast going into the second week of June, or third week of June, is calling for near normal temperatures for much of the area with the bullseye there over the northwest, and we'll continue to see this above normal chance for moisture moving into Utah, particularly the southern and the eastern portions of the area. So as we're looking at that window of critical fire potential in southern and eastern Utah, it is right now through the middle of next week. And then as we see this deeper moisture move in by the third week of June, possibly the overall fire potential may be decreasing slightly in some of those areas. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.